In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. Success isn't just about making money. It's about creating a life of purpose, impact, and resilience. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin, and today we're diving into 3 transformative themes: scaling a business with authenticity, mastering organic marketing for sustainable growth, and redefining success on your own terms. Our guest today is Jeanne Omlor, a business strategist and multi-7-figure entrepreneur who built her success without paid ads or complicated funnels. From being a solo parent, drowning in debt, to scaling to her first $1 million in just 17 months, Jeanne's stories is a masterclass in resilience, strategic thinking, and making an impact with purpose. Whether it's learning how to grow a profitable business organically or breaking free from limiting belief, Jeanne's insight will inspire you to take actions and build success on your own terms. If you enjoy these discussions, please let the world know with a like, small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Miss Jeanne Omlor, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Sam. Thank you for having me here.
Well, it's great to have you here, and your story is nothing short of extraordinary, so I'm looking forward to diving deeper into it. To kick us off, tell us more about Jeanne Omlor International, please.
So Jeanne Omlor International is my coaching company, and it encompasses my main bread and butter part of my company, which is because I have a coaching team, we coach coaches and consultants and certain service providers to maximize their client acquisition, usually online, through organic social media marketing, i.e. we're not teaching them ads. So that's part of my business. And the other arm of my business is a more elite high-end offer where I coach, and I just do this, I coach top CEOs, celebrities, and icons to basically find purpose and executive coaching, life coaching, and business coaching all in one. So the company encompasses both of those offers.
Beautiful. And that's something that we cover a lot of business development tools in which you can grow as a person and as a company as well. I want to bring us back to some of your transformational journey, though. I think there's a lot of value within that. And it seems like you truly were able to overcome some struggles prior to where to be extremely successful like you are. And I was wondering, and you talk about this quite at length when you call yourself basically a broke solo mother of 54, which I saw in your descriptions. Perhaps let's start there. What would you define yourself in such ways, and tell me more about just how big of a deal that is as a point of reference.
Well, I feel like, you have to tell a story, and you have to tell a true story. And you have to be vulnerable and not be afraid to say what is. And when I first started saying I was a broke single mom of 54, solo parent, I say, I don't like saying single mom. I was a broke solo parent, age 54, in deep debt. That was the truth. So it wasn't like I had to stretch very far to find an angle. There was no angle. It was just telling the truth. And I think that's what made it so beautiful, is I didn't have to stretch. I didn't have to create or craft a hook or anything. It just came out. And I thought, and I started telling this because that was just it. And I was just very organically just spilling my truth. And people would be like, wow, that's amazing. I thought, is it? And I thought, it's just the truth. And I think that, when you're telling the story, tell the truth. The story that you're telling has to be the true story. Now, I could have left that part out, and I did for a while. I thought, well, why wouldn't I tell people where I was and where I was? And because we're just doing it. And there's some sort of shame involved in the fact that we weren't always successful. And I thought, wait a minute, what am I doing here? I should really tell people. It wasn't that I was avoiding it. I just never thought of it. And so after about a year or so, I thought, you know what? this business into $1 million, 17 months. And I thought, hey, where was I? Oh, that's right. A year and a half ago or whatever, I was, broke, and I was a solo parent. I still am. And I was in deep debt. No, by the way, I was 54. Let's put it all together. It's just truth. Now, somehow that really inspired a lot of people who tell themselves, they tell that everything is a story that you're telling yourself. So choose your story. So people tell themselves a lot of stories. I can't do this because I work so hard and I'm tired when I get at home at night. So I can't build a business. And I can't do this because I'm a low parent. And I can't do that because I'm old. And I can't do that because I'm not very techie. And I was all of those. I wasn't techie at all. And I think when you just get rid of all those stories that don't serve you, that you're creating because you're creating excuses for yourself, and we all do it. We all do that about our health. We do it about everything. And when you just say, okay, I'm going to be a zone where I'm not going to tell myself stories that don't serve me, that's when you start to really move ahead. And I was at a point where I just had to make this work. So there was no story. It was just, I got to do this. And after that, I thought, gee, I did that. That's interesting. And look where I was. And as I said, it really inspired a lot of people, not because I'd climbed, the highest mountain or gotten to the moon. It's because it was just another human. And I'll say this way. It was just another human being had human experience where there was some struggle. And she said, you know what? I'm deciding I'm doing this. And it was not negotiable. So that's the story of that. And am I fully aware that other people go through way worse? Of course. I didn't have cancer while I was doing this, thank God. So, I've had incredible guests on my podcast who have been through way worse than me. So I think part of my story was also, okay, this is hard, but it's not as hard as it is for other people. So stop complaining, Jeanne. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And I was wondering, I quote Jim Rohn very often just because he's one of my favorite of all time. And in this understanding of, if you want more than what you have, you need to become more than who you are. When you get yourself back to that point, right, the soul parenting, and that's obviously that comes with a set of behaviors and with a set of basically even brain structure to a certain extent. What was the aha moment of saying, you know what, hey, I need to change all of this. This is not the life that I want for me and perhaps my loved ones. Tell me more on kind of like a spiritual, I suppose, psychological level.
Because I have to be real with you. It was by circumstance that happened. So it wasn't like I liked that. So I had started my business 8 years prior to that when I was in New York, and I was just doing the things, and I was a beast, out there networking, and, it's very limited what you can do with networking, right? But I didn't know any better, and I was bringing the kids up, and they were really young then. And then we had to move to the Midwest. So the move, things happen you have no control over as far as markets. So I moved to the Midwest, and they were not the market that New York was for my services. So I'm still fighting it. I'm still out there. And then at one point, you're right. I woke up one morning and I thought, these people are never going to buy from me because this is not my market. This is not my market. I never felt like the Midwest was my market. It wasn't, not that I don't like the Midwest. It wasn't my market or my jam. Okay. Not that it's bad, but just wasn't me. And I woke up one morning and I thought, okay, been now 2 years here, and it's really hard to get clients here for me because I had that classic great service in the wrong place. So you could have the best service in the whole world, but if you're in Alaska, well then don't sell bags of ice because they don't need it, right? So it wasn't like they didn't need it; they didn't want it because it's a different mindset. In New York, everybody's, yeah, I'll hire you, so it was a different thing. So I just thought, okay, I woke up and I thought, okay, I've given this a really good try. Okay, so it wasn't that my behaviors were bad. And I want to be really real. It's not like I was lazy and then I suddenly became a person that wasn't lazy. I was never lazy. Am I lazy? Am I lazy sometimes? Sure. The amount of food we've eaten this Christmas holidays is like a lot. And, I took a break from training for 2 weeks, and I can be very lazy like most human beings and sit and watch Netflix. Okay. But I wasn't intrinsically a lazy person that just didn't care and didn't do anything. So I said, okay, this isn't working clearly, Jeanne. It's not working. What do I do? Because I don't want to be in deep debt and I don't want my daughters to see I'm a failure. Okay. And I'd gotten into deep debt because it was after divorce. Okay. So I was always very responsible with credit till then, but then I just had to use it to live off. And I was actually okay with that. I was grateful. And this is something that you'll ever hear say again, probably. I was so grateful that I was in debt because the alternative would have meant that we were on the street. Okay. My way of seeing things is very different from most people. I make lemonades out of lemons every day. Okay. And don't need to do it so much now, but when something bad happens, I make lemonade out of it. And that's my thing, is take the position you have and make the best of it. And I'm not the most positive person in this earth. I've come a long way. However, I did learn that it can always be worse. Okay. So take what you have and don't wish that the present moment is different, because it's not. You know, it's real. Right now is what I had. I thought, I'm just going to make the most of it. What do I do? Well, I'm going to use my credit cards because at least we're eating and we have a nice place to live in, and my kids don't see lack. And I didn't want them to see lack. Okay. And I was so grateful. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful I have great credit, and a lot of it, a lot of credit. And I thought, well, I don't want to use all my large amounts I had built up such a good credit score that I was getting offered credit cards right, left, center, all the. So there was no shortage of money that wasn't mine. Okay. So I had to use my discipline to not just, I was in deep debt, but I could have been in way deeper debt because I was offered credit cards every day. And they thought, oh, she's using more credit, and they send you more. So I thought, my thing was, thank you, God, that I have credit cards, because this is getting us through this bad spot. And I just thought I'm making the best of it. And then I realized that I couldn't make the best of that situation. I had to change something. So I woke up, I said, okay, I got to get online. I don't know what I'm doing. And I just found any old coaching company, and it wasn't the best. And I thought, but I want to pay 10K because I know about this. I thought, I've got to pay 10K because I know anything under 10K is not going to be a good coaching program, because why is it under 10K? And I want to be with other people that have also at least invested 10K in themselves, because they'll be more serious. So that was my mindset. You want to surround yourself with people that are playing at least bigger than, and I thought 10K is good. I'm not going to go for the 50 because I had to put that on 3 different credit cards, 10 more K of debt all in one day. So I did this program. It wasn't good. It was about doing Facebook ads. And I thought, well, that's not going to work. I thought that was what was going to work. After 2 minutes, I thought, oh no, this is not going to work. I'm a new offer. And I thought, what do I do? So I said to the people, I said, well, I'm not going to do Facebook ads. And they said, oh no, you can't do Facebook ads. I said, yet I just paid you 10K. Show me Facebook ads, but you already knew that wasn't going to work. Okay. What do I do? Yeah, because they were actually shut down by the FTC. So many people complained about them, but that's a sidebar. So then I said, well, what do I do? And they said, organic marketing. And I said, organic, like carrots organic? Because I didn't know what that was. So I'm just showing you, I had such a low sophistication of internet marketing. I was the offline coach for all sorts of businesses and how to, market offline and networking and all sorts of stuff. So they said, no. I said, well, what is it? What do I do? And they said, go talk to people. And I remember thinking, okay, very little bit of coaching here. 4 words, lemonade out of lemons, because this is a lemon program I'm in. And but I thought, you know what? Everybody else is failing in here, but I won't. And I didn't. I just thought, I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to use my network. And I used them all to cheer me on. And I really used my community, and I started helping them. I thought, you know what? They know less than me now. And I just said, everybody, if you want to call, I'm just going to coach you for free. So if I had like 40 people from their program taking sessions where I wasn't selling, I was just saying, here, I'm going to help you. And that goodwill created such good energy that later on, some of them came and hired me. Actually, I didn't expect that one. So I just figured out organic social media marketing by talking to people. And I started, when you do things a lot, you start developing your own systems. And it's not like I'm the only person that does this, but I found certain things psychologically other people hadn't found. And I started coming up with these okay, that means that when you talk to people. I created structures about what that is and how people feel when you talk to them. And I talked to over 900 people on Facebook before I got my first client. 900 conversations and 18 sales calls. So yeah, it wasn't like, gee, I was a lazy person and now I'm not. It was what I'm doing over and over again working. That's what it was. That's that shift.
This is super interesting because obviously you focus a lot on authentic connection. You were just talking about the fact that you were going out, networking, helping people out of goodwill, which is truly fantastic and something that we push forward ourselves. But when you're thinking about, I suppose, why did you believe it? Right? You just said very, very, very low amount of coaching, 4 words. You just said hey, you should focus on organic marketing. Why did you believe organic marketing would be so effective from the get go, and how that embedded you to basically create meaningful connections from that very simple and perhaps, like you said, lemons like advice?
I couldn't do ads, and I realized that I knew, and they were like, "Yeah, we agree. You can ads," and they still don't work now for coaches. I've spent $90K since then, just not desperate, stubbornly seeing how come ads used to work, and people like they just don't work anymore. And after I made a lot of money, I thought, well, maybe these ads do work, and maybe they still don't work. Ad coaches, it's not like the old days. You know that, I know that because you're a marketer, right? So, so, you know what it was when they said that. I thought, wait, do you mean that I can get clients online on Facebook and other places without running ads, like for free? My mind was like blown when I heard that, because all I heard was, wow, what a great opportunity. Okay. Because I was fresh and I thought, wait, you mean, because I didn't know that you could get clients without running ads. I didn't even know that people were DMing people. I didn't know what that was. I said, wait, people get clients in these conversation boxes? They said, yeah. I said, no way. They said, yes. I said, that's a thing? They said, yes. I thought, okay, I'm going to be the best at that. And I literally decided I'm going to make lemonade, and I'm going to be so good at speaking to people that I'm going to crush this, because now I'm with a dog with a bone. I was then given a tool that I didn't even know existed. And I thought, this is such a great tool. Why isn't and how come they're not good at it? It's so an amazing free opportunity where I don't have to pour money down the drain with ads and funnels and tech and all of that stuff that I hated. So I thought, you know what? This is amazing. This is the answer, and it's all I've got. So it was all I've got, because I wasn't going to go back offline doing something that wasn't working, which is demoralizing. I couldn't do ads. I thought, this is it. And I thought, I have to make this work. There is nothing else I can do to market my business at this point. And I was correct. There is nothing else you can do to market your business as a coach except for organic marketing. So unless you know a bunch of people, and even that's cobbled together with the referrals here and there. So I just thought, this is it. There is no negotiation here, Jeanne. You have to be so good at it. And I will do what it takes. And as I said, I had 100 conversations, talking to people, hearing what they liked. And I realized, because I used to coach all businesses, I was a business strategist, that, oh my goodness. And I started talking to more and more people. I thought, wait, coaches really need my help. And I niched down. When I niched down to coaches, which I was resistant for a long while, so one of the coaches in there, the only one that ever gave me any good advice, said, Jeanne, yes, go for coaches. It's a rampant niche and they really need your help. And I'd had a few coaches anyway, in my career. And when I niched down and I started focusing on coaches and then consultants, and some digital marketers actually coach with me, and service providers and healers, and, mainly coaches, it exploded, because they were desperate and seeking answer of how I did that. And I'd say, well, I just did this. And it was very simple. They're like, no ads, no funnels, no build your email list, no even build a website. You don't really need a website. You don't. And they're like, how are you doing that? And so I started helping people, and I got to $1 million in 17 months of starting this with no ads and all on my own. So it was 92% profit I worked out, which that's the same as somebody else running ads and paying, all that, making about 3 or 4 million, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. 92% is great margins, obviously. No need to explain that further. You talk a lot about the concept of diamond clients, and you just mentioned about the niching down. And I love that, actually, the sound of that. Never heard it before, but it's interesting.
It's my brand. It's my branding. I made up the diamond client.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And diamond clients is from a quite widely basically spoken about topic, but that branding, I think, is quite beautiful. When you're Can you explain further, perhaps, with the concept of diamond clients more at length, and just how different basically your tools are compared to other things that are available in the market, and why is it so important? Just the paradigm shift of saying, well, actually, if I market to everyone, I'm actually marketing to no one, and
Mm.
niching down is actually a commodity. It's actually necessary for my success. Tell us more about basically how you basically, I suppose, work out all these things together.
Okay, so diamond client, my thing is, after having coached already for 8 years before I got online, we've all had clients we don't love, and it actually ruins our life. Let's be real. We've all had painful clients, and it ruins your life. Believe it's not just about getting clients and making money. It's about life quality. I'm at a point now where somebody is not a good client, or I feel like they're not going to be, or they're already coming in, and I will actually, like the other day, I'd signed a client up full pay for very high ticket, high ticket. And I could see the writing on the wall, and I just gave him his money back. And he couldn't believe it. And I said, I actually want joy with my coaching. And I just felt a burden to him. And he goes, yeah, I get it. He knew. He came in and started being a painful client even before we started coaching him. And I just thought, I'm going into Christmas. I feel burdened. I'm going to give him his money back. And I just felt so free, because it's not about, at first, I wouldn't have done that because I needed the money. Right. But when you get to a where you don't really need the money. Do I want to make money as business? Sure. But do I need to have a client that's going to already be a pain first? No, I don't. So the money was sent back, and I felt great. So that wasn't a diamond client, not a bad person, but didn't understand how to such a point where, and you didn't even understand this is such a burden, and we haven't even started coaching you. So it wasn't even a client that was unhappy because we haven't even started. So it was just beyond, before we even started, there were all these demands that were beyond anything. And I thought, this is unreasonable and weird. So I'm just, to put it in simple terms. And I just thought, if we are already having problems even before the service starts, so it wasn't that we were doing a bad job. Let's be real here. It wasn't that they were complaining, because there was nothing to complain about yet at all. So a diamond client is a client that really needs your help. That's the first thing. They have to really need your help, or what you're selling, whether that's an object, or it's a service, or anything. The client or customer, depending on whether they're buying it or it's a service, has to really need what that is. And it's going to change their lives or make their life better in some way. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing for coaching is they have to want the change. They might need it, but they don't want the transformation. So they have to need the transformation. They need to really want transformation. They really, truly need to want it so badly that they're like, yes, you can help us. I really, really want this. Okay. And the third thing is they have to value your service and pay you with grace. Okay, so they need the service they want, and they're going to do whatever it takes, and they respect you, that they're not going to nickel and dime you, because that is not a diamond client. A diamond client doesn't nickel and dime. They say, oh my gosh, this is what I need. I trust you. Let's do it. Here's my money. That's a diamond client. And if any of that is missing, and then they come in and they do the work, of course. Okay, and they're coachable. Right. That's a diamond client. That's it. They want it. They really want the transformation. They're not nickel and diming and disrespecting you or the pricing. They see the value, and they come in and they do the work. Awesome. That's the diamond client. Okay, so now what's the other question? Because you asked a couple. So that was explaining what a diamond client is. And then you were talking about niching down, right?
Yeah, exactly. When you're thinking about this mentality of, typically when you get started, and I was there myself, right? You just take anybody because, like you said, you feel like you need to. Perhaps for you specifically, or even for how you advise your client concerning niching down, how does that occur, and what tools basically you use to tell them, hey, no, actually niching down is actually what will propulse your business forward, not backward. What's
Okay. So there's this, what happens with marketing in general is that people tell a story, and everybody jumps on the bandwagon, and then they all start believing these. magical words. And I don't see things that way. And I also like how you define your niche. Some psychographic. It's not like what they're doing. It's their psychology. And I figured out different ways of helping my clients find their niche. And sometimes it was people in different actual sectors, but had the same psychographics. Does that make sense? So, and then when I helped a couple of clients with this, they were like, wow, I never would have thought of that. And then they were like, yes, that's my market. And it didn't have to do whether they were a shoe salesman or a tech company. It was, they were brought together by a different way of niching by psychographics. Does it make sense? So generally, that's not the case. Generally, it is the niche. Where are they in that niche of, a coach or, whatever. So this is the deal with niching. There is no holy grail. And personally, yes, it helped me when I got clear. But, I have coaches and consultants, and I do have some people say, would this work for me? I'm like, yeah, it would work for yours. And I don't say no if I figured out, like I have an artist in my program. It works. And marketing is like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. So I always look at it case by case, but generally it's coaches and consultants, and that's market. I have a digital marketer in there right now. I've gotten a few digital marketers who don't know how to market. Go figure. But they want to learn the organic marketing because they only do the ads, and they know that that's a real piece missing now. If you don't know organic marketing as a digital marketer, that is a huge tool missing in your toolbox, especially now because ads have stopped working. You need to have both. But anyway, niching down, sometimes it's good to stay broad for a while. To some of my clients, I'm like, you know what? Let's start broad because we don't want to niche so far down that we are and we're ground level, and then we can't see the trees. So sometimes you want to stay a little broad and have a bit more of a broad view of seeing more, like a aerial view. And then you can go, okay, I'm going to hover here at aerial view a bit, and then and then we're going to go a bit in more because now we know it's only these types of 3 trees rather than the whole forest. And then you get what I'm saying? Hey, you're just a bunch of different trees in a forest. Let's stay broad, and we're going to handle the sequoias and the oaks and the whatevers. Then we're going to zone a bit, and then it's only 5 trees. And then it's this. And then you might end up really niching down, or you might not. You might stay with 2. It just depends on the offer, and on the human being and what their business is. So it's not that cookie cutter. And I think a big problem with marketing is people try to just make it so cut and dried and cookie cutter, and now we're all in a box. And that's the problem. Once you're in the box, it's hard to break out of that box.
Absolutely. It's hard to see the label when you're in that jar, perhaps. You mentioned something very, very interesting, which is balancing success and purpose. Mentioning obviously the example of this high-paying client that you give him his money back, and hallelujah. When you're thinking about how do you personally guide your clients to balance their drive, because obviously entrepreneurs are ambitious by nature. Most are visionaries, some are not, but most are visionaries. When you're talking about this balancing of their drive for success, but also matching that with their desire to make a meaningful impact and staying on purpose, what have you found to be most effective to basically bridge those two worlds together?
Well, I don't know if I agree that most entrepreneurs are visionaries. I would say, no, I wouldn't. I'd say most entrepreneurs are trying to find an alternative to having a job. hmm Yeah. Now, of course, there's certain niches like coaches, and I think coaches do really want to help people, but that's because they're coaches. But I'd say if you're talking about all entrepreneurs, I think they just want to make money, really, if you're talking about all entrepreneurs. But then, yeah, I mean, do you really think that most digital marketers really are just visionaries, or they just want to find a business they're going to make money with?
Could be both. Could be both. Be a visionary within a singular landscape, or find a technology perhaps that will revolutionize the space, or find a new ways of communicating messaging, perhaps. And perhaps it's also I'm a huge believer that you see the world for who you are. So I suppose personally the people around myself are visionaries, and maybe I do a overgeneralization of that concept.
Mhm. Right. Well, I've been around. I've been coaching for 13 years, all sorts of businesses, and trust me on this, not all of them are visionaries. They're when you're working with law firms, no, I don't think they're visionaries. Some of them were. I think they're just lawyers that are running a law firm, right? Um, or whatever, it depends. I'm not saying there aren't visionaries, but I don't think it's the norm that everybody's a visionary. Obviously, and I'm around a bunch of visionaries, but I understand that's who I'm around, right? So, um, so that's the first thing. And yes, I mean, I forget the question now, but I'll just roll with it.
Let me reiterate. No, let me reiterate. What I said was, and you point that out very successfully, and you seem to do a lot of internal work concerning basically that topics of balancing success and basically and purpose. And I was just wondering, basically, for your specific clients, in which I'm sure some of those are very ambitious and they're all in on success, and let's work 80 hours a week, even though this makes me miserable. Which, you know what, good if it doesn't, good for you. But how do you balance, and what's your process to basically making sure that they achieve what they want to achieve success wise, but still on purpose, stay on mission and meaning?
Mm. Right. Well, I don't recommend that any of my clients work 80 hours. So when I was first, oh no, when I was first building this, I was working like a maniac because I wanted to. And I was like, this is my way out. I was so driven that I had something to do. It was amazing. And I never burnt out because I was just so intrinsically motivated. Um, you have to have a life, but it doesn't mean that you start a business. There's going to be some hustle. There's always some hustle, especially when you start a business. And if you have the mindset, oh, well, I don't want to hustle because look at those rich people. They're not hustling. They did hustle. Everybody hustled. Okay. There's nothing wrong when you started. Well, you have to. When you first start a business, you're going to have to put more grit in it and not go, oh, I refuse to work more than 4 days a week, 4 hours a day. Because, well, how much do you want it? And by the way, you know, if you're loving working 80 hours a week and you're not neglecting, if you don't have kids yet or anything, go for it. No, if people are not married and don't have kids, I mean, that's a perfect time for them to hustle, right? And they're not neglecting anybody, right? What are you going to do? A lot of them would just be drinking with their friends anyway. There's not much meaning in that, right? So I think it's great when people hustle, especially when they're not neglecting a relationship. Perfect. Is it so much fun if you have family and you're neglecting your kids? Well, then that's not cool. That's no way to live. and I wouldn't recommend that. But even when I was building this, I was with my kids and I took them everywhere and they had everything. It wasn't like they didn't see me, So I don't think that, the kids, if you have children, should never not see their parents because of the business being built. That's just another belief system. Oh, well, I've got to neglect my kids to build this business for 5 years. No, that's just it's another story that people tell themselves because then they're spending time doing other things they don't have to do, which they could spend with the kids. So that's another story. My thing is, if you're loving it and you're not burning out, you're not burning out. You're loving it. You love working. Some people love working, and it's working. When it started working and it was working, why would I not want to do it? It was fun. It still is fun. I just don't have to work as hard now because I have a bit of a team now. And I suggest that people do start getting a team member as soon as they can to take some of the work. Obviously, delegation is important if you find the right people. So work-life balance, I don't think there is actual balance. I think there's just harmony. I want to do this now and I want to do it. And I'm not thinking, oh, gee, I didn't get to do this, but I do make sure I carve out time to be fit and to eat well and spend time with my kids. I practiced a religion. So I take Sundays off. I've always taken Sundays. So I think what really saved me was 1 day a week. I didn't work anyway. I might do a couple little things here and there, but when you know that you're working 6 days and 1 day you're not, well, there's balance there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this concept of balance is one that is more and more refuted, which is interesting. One of my favorite partners slash client is and she always told me the same thing. She said, Sam, don't fall to the myth of balance. There's only harmony exists. Balance is a buzzword people throw around, which is very interesting. And you were talking about some of your own basically limiting belief, this understanding. I know that you openly discuss this actually quite at length when it comes to basically wealth and success and what it is. And I think that's very inspiring for not only myself, but others in their own self-imposed, basically, boundaries. I was wondering, basically, what advice would have given basically either younger yourself, basically, but younger, or even perhaps other person that's struggling with those boundaries, in basically helping them with perhaps understanding that limiting beliefs and about their potential is their own and only true enemy. What were you able to, I suppose, what advice would you have for that?
It's funny, but it all comes down to not feeling you're good enough. It's all that. It's the feeling of, who am I to say that I can do this? And that's for those other smart people, or those other people that have this, or those other people that are doing that. It's not me. And I feel like in everything I've, I used to feel like, well, I'm just not good enough. And why would I succeed in that? And I think if I could go back and talk to my younger self, it would be, just do it. Stop doubting, because doubting is a waste of time. There's no doubt. Do it, and did it work or not? But to doubt and to second guess and be all insecure. Insecurity, nobody cares. It's yourself that's caring, because you don't feel good enough. It's all, and through our lives, we all have this inkling somewhere, because we're human, that I'm good enough. And of course that doesn't play out in my life now, but it's probably there somewhere. How good am I? Right? Because you're always wanting something, going for something higher. Maybe I'm not the best coach in the whole world. What do I need to be? No. you know, who is the best coach? There's no one best coach. It's just the one that's making the most money. So I would say, stop all of the turning around and around and around in your head, because nobody cares but you. And it's just all a monodrama. You know what a monodrama? Monodrama is a drama that's all taking place in somebody's head. It's all one person in the drama, in their head, just spinning. But you take yourself out of that and look at yourself. It's like, nobody cares. You're just sitting in a chair, and you've made yourself so important in a way, because when you think about it, that is also ego. It's a different kind of ego. Okay. It's still ego. It's, oh, who am I? It's still I, me, right? Instead of, who cares? Just go do it. You're just another human being. And I mean that I don't, you know, I think that we all can be done way, because we're in God's image. However, we're not, like, we're not God. And I feel like there is this culture of meanness and, oh, I can't do this because people are going to notice. Nope, they won't. All they're noticing is they're noticing your actions. The people around you are noticing your actions and whether you do what you say you're going to do. But that's the people around you. The whole world, I mean, there's so many of us, and we're all on social media and blah, blah, blah. I mean, how important are we? Really not that important, because if we start to feel our own importance, that's the problem. When you start to feel how important you are, that blocks you. If you're just another human being having this experience here in this world, and I'm just going to do my best and see what happens, and waste time and energy about, am I good enough? Who cares if you're good enough or not? Just do it. No one cares. Not one person. And even I was talking the more I think about this, nobody cares. You're all impressed with things when you're younger, but I was talking to one of my friend's daughters, and she was, young, and she wants to go to, like, an Ivy League. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I don't want to burst her bubble. But I was talking about somebody else in front of them, and I didn't realize she was listening. And I said, oh, yeah, this guy went to Princeton, like, for a year. And I said, and all he does is talk about it. I said, literally not one person cares about that. And he looks at his daughter and goes, like, see? Like, see? And it was funny, because I'm not demeaning do things, but really, where you went to school and all of that, nobody cares unless you're like a recruiter, right? I was a top executive recruiter for Wall Street, for investment banks. I kind of had to care, like, okay, where did they go? But you've seen so much of, we didn't care. It's just like, what does the client want? Oh yeah, they want somebody from Ivy League. Okay, who's in the Ivy League? But it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm so impressed. It was just a box to tick that our client wanted. We knew very well that often people to the Ivy Leagues were better people to hire, but we couldn't tell them that. They really wanted that. Okay, we'll give it to you. Does it make sense? But We saw the other side. It was just, is the person really good at their job, regardless of where they went to university? That's how we thought. But they get so caught up in where do they go? And then we also often saw really vets that were Ivy Leaguers and they were just like, no ethics. I mean, it was terrible. So I've seen the other side. So when somebody says, oh, I went here, I'm like, good for you. It doesn't, it, it it's really, it's that insecurity. The insecurity of, am I good enough? No, I've got to tell everybody I went to an Ivy League or I did this or I know this person or I drive this car or, you know what I mean? All of that stems from no self-worth at all. And I'm not saying that because you bought a sports car, you have no self-worth. But if you buy a sports car because you want people to think of you a certain way, then you have no self-worth, right? If you buy a sports car, love cars, great, go for it. I love cars. But you know what I mean? Wouldn't want to buy a sports car because I want everybody to look. In fact, I'd want to maybe hide it so people don't think I'm one of those sports car people. I just like driving that. So that's it. It really is. Sorry, that was long, but it really is. Stop making yourself so important and but yet believe in your greatness. So it's a dichotomy there. Does that make sense? Be humble and say, I can actually be, you said, be your best self. You can be better than you believe, right? But if it's all about you and you're the one, well, you can't be better because source is not us, source is God. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Be humble enough to understand you can lose it all, but be confident enough that you can basically take it back to it just come back to greatness, perhaps. And that's very important. There's a dichotomy there, but I think it's one that everyone should embrace. It's a very fine line, but when you're on the line, it feels very good. You talk a lot about obviously legacy and meaning in business, and you were just discussing your past self as a recruiter and kind of like these very tedious checklist type of basically I suppose position where that's an Ivy League and his parents went to Harvard or whatever it is. Those very yeah, just a very, I suppose, futile type of.
Oh, actually, no, I actually enjoyed it a lot. I loved that job. I was really successful as a recruiter on Wall Street. I loved it. I loved talking to people because why I love coaching, and I would counsel them, and a lot of them were very great, interesting people. So I actually enjoyed that job, and it was really exciting. And it wasn't that it was tedious. It was that, the client wanted certain things. And sometimes we're like, okay, that's what you want, but we really want to get you the best candidate. But if you just want to make them Ivy League, fine. And sometimes the best candidate was an Ivy Leaguer. But I'm just saying it doesn't mean they're the best candidate. That's all. The best candidate is the one that's really good at what they do, right? And you know what I'm saying. So yeah, that was interesting. I loved interviewing the people and I liked it, actually. Mm.
Yeah, no, which is great. And it's a good thing you loved it. When you're thinking and you talk about that significantly, also from specifically on Instagram that I saw was kind of like creating lasting legacies and this understanding of finding a ways in which you can build things that resonate with your personal and professional values. This is a little bit of a more of a philosophical questions, but how do you define legacy? What it is to build a legacy in your terms?
Well, the thing is, after quite a few years, nobody will know who I am. Nobody will know who you are because we're not like legendary movie stars. And even now, my kids don't know who I'm talking about when I'm talking about some of the legendary movie stars. And I thought, wow, my kids don't know who John Wayne is, or, so even their legacy is getting lost, except for people that know about film history. And that's to my shock. Okay. Because you think they're like, who is that, mom? So, um, legacy really is, I think for me now, like it's your family legacy of how they remember you. And then you'll be forgotten. And that's humble, you'll be forgotten. But the legacy is for the next generation, maybe the generation after. What did you teach them? Okay. What are you teaching also people? And let's face it, if I get off social media after a while, people don't more because I'm not Robbins, right? But that doesn't matter because legacy is how you touch people. Legacy. Some people have come back to me and said, I'm not your client, but I've been following you. And I just want you to know that I think of you when I make business decisions. And I went and bought a car the other day and I thought of you. I thought, wow, this woman doesn't even, she said, I've been on your Instagram for a few years now. And I just wanted to write to you to let you know, I just got goosebumps, that I think of you and what you say, even when I'm buying a car. And I was thinking to myself, I'm going to be like Jeanne Omlor, and one day I'm going to buy a Tesla. Okay, because I have a Tesla. All right. I was in tears that this woman reached out and wrote me this very lovely message on Instagram. That's legacy. That it wasn't about the Tesla. It was about that she could do this and family. She goes, you've given me hope for like a bright future. And I thought, wow, I've given her a future. That's going to affect her children. Some influence that I've had over this one human being is influencing. And she talks about me with her husband, like this woman, Jeanne Omlor, she made it and she was old. She's just like down to earth and we can do this because she can. And, I want to get a Tesla too because, she wants to not pay for gas and blah, blah, blah. So that's legacy. Touch people really. And she's been watching my content for a while. So she knows odd, you know, and it's not, she said, I just love everything you're saying. And I just want you to know that I think of you daily almost, like about what am I doing? What would Jeanne Omlor? Wow. I mean, what a responsibility to show a good example, right? Whoa, they're watching you. Again, I'll be forgotten, but that's some legacy because somehow that will play out in her kids that she's in a good way, I hope. And then that will influence. That's legacy, spreading the love, even if they don't know where it came from. That's legacy.
Beautiful. And I love that. And how great is that, right? That people come to people like yourself and even myself. I have plenty of young entrepreneurs that comes to me and say, hey Sam, I saw this clip of you or so on, or congratulations for being there. It's quite lovely. When you're thinking about just legacy in an impact lines, which seem to be the way you define it, you have very direct impact, right? The people, the partners you have, your employees, your clients, those are direct impact. But then we live in a world now where indirect impact, as I like to call it, is so humongous, right? You have a post on social media, thousands of people, even millions of people that you don't know may see your post and may be affected basically by it in some way or another. How do you, because that was not always the case, obviously, in your life. You're you're a seasoned professional, so you lived way prior to basically the internet age. How do you wrestle with that thoughts now and with that responsibilities a little bit deeper of just, hey, there's people out there that actually values what I'm saying so much. They think about it, even though they never talk to me directly. They're just tell me more about how does that make you feel?
Mm. Mhm. It makes me feel like my purpose is actually being lived. That's why I started almost crying. I thought, wow, this is actually working. It's working because I've had several, not everybody's going to write to me, but I've had several people write to me, email me. Jeanne, you got me. I mean, one woman said, I'm not your client base, but I've been following you. And you got me out of a deep depression. I started a trucking company because of your content. And she said, and I just needed to write to you to thank you. And she goes, I'm not a coach, but just everything you're saying, I was in deep depression. I got out of it, started a trucking company, and you changed my life. I started bawling because I thought, wow, this person bothered to come and tell me that because she said, I just had to tell you because I have to tell you. And that's my purpose is to help people to thrive. That's actually my purpose in life. One of them. You have several purposes, but my out facing purpose, my deep purpose, I'm emotionally connected to helping people to thrive. Why? Because I wasn't thriving and I know how bad that is. When you've been somewhere that's not good, as this is not fun, not thriving, and then you do thrive, you're like, okay, I don't want people to be where I was. I want them to be where I am now. And I think that life can have struggles and challenges, but why do they have to have so many extra struggles when they could just get some answers, right? So help people. Um, Life can be hard for a lot of people already. So let's make it easier and help them. And I don't mean enable, but, speak life. So, yeah, I mean, that's my purpose, is to help as many people on this earth to thrive. And when I can see a place where I can help somebody, I do. There, and I don't mean I coach for free because I have a business, but in other ways, I'm always introducing people and like maybe I could help that person. So, and I also have, a notice in my calendar, do one nice thing for one person today. And I'm not talking about my kids because I should be doing, obviously we're doing nice stuff for our family. That's selfish too. It's our families, right? So beyond, I have a note. Okay, who did I do something? And I'm what's one nice thing, good thing I can do for somebody else today? It's not a client or family member or somebody that's paying me, right? So yeah, I mean, I really feel if we're humble about legacy, it's not about, oh, I want, a wing of a hospital to have my name on it. Like, who cares, right? In fact, you could build the wing of the hospital and not put your name on it. That's also legacy because you built the hospital wing. But I think when we get tied up in the ego of it, of when I'm dead, that person, you won't care when you're dead. Because when you're dead, you don't care about on earth. I don't believe you're going to care whether the wing of the hospital has your name on it or not. But somehow they both care. But it's not about your name being on the hospital wing. It's about what did you do to get the name on it. Does that make sense? It's that you built the wing, that you gave the money, that you supported these little league baseball players that didn't have, uniforms or whatever it is. So I think we have to be really, really humble about what legacy is. Legacy is a good example to your family and to your children that they will then carry on a good example of ethics and morals and, doing the right thing. And, I'm started asking my kids every day, and sometimes I forget, like, what value did you bring to other human beings today? That's the question we should all be asking ourselves. What value did I bring to another human being today? What is that? It's not how much money did I make. Of course, I also ask that question because I'm a business and we do our numbers. Okay. It's about, if you start having the mindset of what value did I bring? Oh, let me see. I comforted that friend who was, not feeling great, or I gave this money away. It's not always about giving money, right? Or I stopped on the street when that person fell, or, or I did this free training for some people, or I did donate, or I don't know. There's some value. And it could be, I'm on my morning walk and there's an old man and I greet him with a very happy good morning. Because I've seen when I do that, when I'm on my morning walk, they light up. I'm like, wow, I just changed that person's morning because this person walked in and said, good morning, how are you? And they're like, oh, thank you. So that also, don't underestimate human interaction. People are lonely, and being kind to people, you are providing value.
Yes, absolutely, and I'll go even further than that with the example of building the wing for the sake of having your name on it. I think that actually purposefully living a life in which is worth commemorating with a street name or a building, basically, that's way more honorable. This idea where which you didn't do it because of your name on the building, but the life you had was so great that we want to honor it. I think there's some great novelty there as well. And you seem like that I know you for only 15 minutes now. But you seem like quite a complex thinker. At least you strive me this way. Were you always that way when you're thinking about clarity and resilience and ways to make the world better? Was that always a part of you, or how did that came to your life?
It's so funny because this is what I say about myself. I say to people, I'm a very simple person. Okay. All right. And every now and then somebody goes, oh, no, you're not. Because to me, I'm probably not simple. I know as a kid I was pretty complex in some ways, but still simple in the sense I want to keep it simple. And I think the more you make things complex needlessly, that's not intelligent. So my whole thing in marketing and how I help my clients, my whole thing and what I'm known for is simplifying everything down so that people can understand it and making it just a few steps. And one of my colleagues said, he goes, that's actually your brilliance, because there's all this like, layers of marketing. And he goes, and all you did was you went, okay, let me get all this complexity, boil it down and say, here, just do these few things and it's going to work. He said, that's actually quite brilliant. And I thought it was dumb because I'm not like talking about all this complex stuff. And he goes, No, and I mean, he's right. I'm not saying I'm brilliant, but I know that the most brilliant lecturers are the ones that could break down complex thoughts and philosophies down so the students can understand it. The worst professors are the ones that are just so intellectual that nobody's following them because they're just talking to themselves, right? It is egoic, very egoic, because it's, well, I'm going to talk on the level I need to, and if you don't understand me, too bad. If you're not as intelligent as I am. And my thing is humility. People aren't understanding this. How do we keep breaking it down, breaking it down, breaking it down, breaking it down? Of course, you can't break down the meaning of life to that little tiny bit, but marketing you can. Rocket science. So I like to, just as an example, make it as simple as possible, as few steps as possible. And they're like, whoa, that's all I need to do? Yes, but you have to do it well. And the complexity comes with the like piano. You can play a piece that's maybe not seeming so complex, and I don't play piano. I wish I did. Okay. But I did study piano at some point. My kids have had a lot of piano lessons. But it's playing the piece over and over and over and over and over again till it's the complexity is the practice of it and what's coming. So um, maybe it's a joke. I think I'm a simple person. I like things to be overcomplicated, and maybe they are. I don't like things to be too complicated. I like things to be very simple because I think, and there's a lot of books written about this, of simplifying your life. I've always been like that. I'm a minimalist. I've always realized too much complexity and too much stuff and too many belongings. It makes me a little crazy. The less you have, and at one point, I just wore the same color T-shirt every day. I just bought the same kind of like Steve Jobs because I realized, and there's a philosophy on this too. I realized, like Arianna Huffington was talking about this, that just don't have so many clothes because it makes your decision in the morning of what you're wearing very hard. So I thought, oh my gosh, I thought of that because I just want to just grab something. Okay, now I bought a few more clothes because I want more color for my podcast, but it's because I wanted more color for my podcast and I was going to an event. So I only do stuff usually with a need. I don't go out and buy bunches of clothes because I just don't do that. It's meaningless for me. Okay. And I'm very much, why am I doing this and what does it serve? I need some clothes. I'm going to this event. I'm going to go buy some clothes. Does it make sense? I don't randomly, I hate shopping, actually. It's just, everybody knows that about me. One of my friends said, I'm so proud of you. You actually went shopping. Because it's just like, to me, oh my gosh, I got to go to a shop. I got to look. I got to try it on. I'm not a normal woman in that way. I should actually get a personal shopper to do it for me. Then I'd have to deal with a personal shopper. So I'm always thinking, okay, then I do that. Then I have to deal with that person. It's more time and energy. So my thing is about conserving energy, simplifying everything, and having the simplest life possible with some complexity for fun. If you want to have some fun, sure, go. Yeah, I want to travel. That's not simple, but it's the fun part. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely, absolutely. I love what you struck me as a very someone that adapts in very very rigorously to his environments to a point where I think it's worth sharing. I think it was Albert Einstein. I may be wrong. Don't quote me on this. But he said the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. And when you're thinking about just how fast the world is evolving, and obviously marketing as a concept, but pretty much any lane nowadays seem like it change every every few days, every few weeks. Um, when how can entrepreneurs cultivate a mindset, a growth mindset where adaptability to thrive can be something that works in their favor. Is there any tricks or advice you have for people feeling a little bit lost in this way of just, hey, everything is just feel like it's surpassing me, right? It's too complex, it's going too quickly. What's how do you wrestle with these ideas?
Mm, mhm, mm. Okay, first of all, you're super intelligent, because years ago when I was in France, I had a friend who was an encephalographist. Those people that measure brain activity? I can never remember encephalo something graphy. And she was an older woman, and she was actually one of my clients. I used to teach English. And she said, I've been, and she was very lovely. And I went and stayed at her house and everything. And she said, I've been watching you, because her job was studying brain activity with this and stuff, like probes. She was watching you, Jeanne. She was, you know what? She said, you have an intelligence that not many people have. And I was down and out in Paris. I wasn't feeling great about myself, and I was like kind of failing, and I was a broke artist. And I said, really? Really? And she goes, yes. She goes, I've noticed that you adapt, because she had seen me in different situations, and I would just go, okay, and I moved and did different things. She said, you have quite uncanny ability to adapt to situations in a heartbeat. And I said, really? Doesn't everybody do that? She goes, oh, no. People are so stuck, it's so hard for them to adapt. She said, you are very good at this. And she said, that is the primary intelligence of a human being, is to adapt. So you're pretty smart, because you pegged me on that one. And I think it was also practice, okay, because I like change. So this is how I see the adaptation with marketing and with business. You can't be at the mercy of change and be like, oh, there's the new trend. I'm going to jump on that surfboard and surf that trend. And then, oh, there's another one, because there's no stability in that. Okay. So what I do is I see, is what I'm doing still valid? I wait. I don't just jump on the next, but I'm open to trends, because we have to be adaptable to, for instance, like Facebook ads don't work anymore. So I stopped trying. I was like, well, this is never going to work. And I did test ads after the fact, because I was stubborn, to the tune of 90, and they did not work. And I thought, okay, they don't work. Then I thought, okay, organic marketing still works. It's still working. Me and my clients are still getting tons of clients with organic marketing. It still works. So no matter what people are saying, it's working for us. We have proof. We're making money. We're getting clients. Therefore, I don't listen to people saying, oh, organic marketing's dead. No, it's not. It's working, because we are living proof. Okay. So when they tell me that, I'm like, well, it's actually working. No, it's not. I'm like, yeah, it is, because, proof. And, people will say all sorts, and then they say, oh, nobody's paying high ticket. I'm like, yeah, they actually are. No, they're not. They are. Well, no, they're not. I'm like, well, they're paying me and all my clients. So I don't know what to say when they're just this they're creating. In fact, I've gotten, the last year, we completely got way more very high ticket clients than we've ever done. It was a changing year for my very high ticket for the whole year, more than my 12 weeks. So I don't listen to this, because that's their story, because they're failing trying to impose people. Because then they're trying to convince everybody, well, no, it's not working. And that's a human thing. So what you need to do is you need to validly say, okay, is what we are doing still working? If it's working, why change it? Just because there's a bandwagon. Now, there's other things that are working, like but AI marketing is not really working that well yet. Like I'm really doing a lot of research into that, because that is the new way, and I don't want to be left behind. But I've looked into it, and it's very spammy and weird. Okay, so I keep looking into it. I'm thinking maybe it's going to get better, and maybe there's some, but I haven't found that AI marketing is great, not at all. So that's great. We're going to keep doing what we're doing that is working. And then if we can make it better or easier, sure, I will integrate. So I think the key word is integration, not throw the bathwater and just, kill it and go for the next shiny object, because that is what people love doing. They love the shiny object. Oh, I'm going to just completely quit that and go all in on this. Why? If something's working, look at what the new trends are that can make what you're doing that's working, or it might stop. Now, if organic marketing just stops working, then obviously I won't be teaching that anymore. I'll be doing something else, but I will have figured that out, or I'll pretty quickly, right? Or I'll do something else. I don't know. The point is, it's not about being stuck where you are, but it isn't. It is about, if something is working. Alex Hormozy said this: do something, make it work, and just keep doing that over and over and over again. And that is exactly what I've done without even knowing that. I just thought, this is working. Why should I change it? Oh, you should do something else. Why? It's working. It keeps working. You should do something else. The world tells you stuff. Do this. I'm like, why? It's working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Make it better. So every day I'm like, how can I make this better? So then you're now like developing which is much easier than starting something new. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And the highest, and we've been knowing this for thousands of years, actually. We're just very stubborn. But some very obviously some great thinkers like Leonardo da Vinci, for example, famously said that the highest degree of sophistication is simplicity. And we keep on trying to make things more complicated because, it's egoic, we sound great. That's fantastic. And, I'm a victim of doing that sometimes. And that's just how humans, I suppose, behave. But one thing that is also very interesting, and I think part of who you are and the lessons what you teach, is this understanding that simplicity in its purest forms is basically directly related to results. Hey, I'm doing things. It's simple, but it's not because it's simple that it's effective. But I'm seeing that being simple is effective, and therefore I continue doing so. There's a big difference between those things. Obviously, if you're doing simple things and they don't work, then this is not the best route forward. And I was thinking basically in your practice and what some of the behaviors and I suppose actions you're making, what do you recommend basically for entrepreneurs trying to find their ways in understanding that sometimes less is more?
Well, first of all, I'm just going to say this. You have to get help. Why would you futz around and not get the experience of other mentors and coaches that can just shortcut it for you? Is there a shortcut? Yes. They always say, oh, there's no shortcuts. Yeah, there are shortcuts. Legit, there are shortcuts. So whenever anybody says, oh, there's no shortcuts in life, I'm like, what planet are you living on that you don't know there are shortcuts? Yeah, we know there are shortcuts. Look at all the people that are shortcutted into careers because they know people, right? There's that kind of shortcut. So first of all, don't try to work everything out yourself. I will pay any coach for anything that we need help with because I just know we're going to save time, money, energy, and we're going to be more successful. As soon as I wanted to get more fit, I hired a top personal trainer. We want to get my kids scholarships. We hired a scholarship coach. I don't want to figure that stuff out. I don't have time. We were like, wow, we know how to pay nothing for college now because of the scholarship coach. That was worth it. Instead of trying to figure that out on our own. Why? Because we're trying to save a buck. Why? It's not worth it. So the first thing is very successful. Always get coaches and mentors and not just free mentors. Okay. And they're always like trying to find that best free mentor. Why? Pay. Because when people have knowledge, pay them for it. It's worth it. That experience is worth it. Find somebody that's done what you want to do and pay them to get the shortcut. You have to do the work, but there is a shortcut. Okay. So so don't listen when they go, oh, there's no shortcuts. Just, figure it out yourself. And then there's this pride of, I should figure this out myself. I hear that all the time. And I'm like, who wrote, let's go assassinate the person. I'm joking, but let's, who wrote that you out yourself? Whoever said that? Then if we should figure everything out ourselves, why are there even schools? Why are there universities? Why are there football coaches? Why are there piano teachers? Why are there anybody teaching? If we just have to figure it out ourselves, then why did we even invent school? Just make those kids figure it out themselves. Just, be in the fields and figure out what they're going to do with their lives. When you think about how stupid that saying is, it makes your mind real that you should figure it out. Do you know what I mean? Then that means we do not need education at all. Like one bit, right? We don't need it because they should figure out how to play football themselves and be a football star. And all the Olympic people, they shouldn't need a coach. Figure it out yourself how to do all that. No, we need coaches, mentors, teachers, and guides and all sorts of stuff and parents. So that's just dumb. Sorry, I'm not going to, every time I hear that, I'm like, what? So instead of saying, I should just figure it out myself, ask yourself, why are you saying that? And usually what it is to pay a mentor or a coach. So I'm going to say, oh, I should just figure it out myself. That's what they're hiding behind. Or a service like yours. I should just figure out how to do Facebook ads myself. Why would you do that when somebody can just do it for you and do a good job? So it really is, again, lose all ego. I love that book by, was it Ryan Holiday? Ego is the Enemy. It's a really good, simple book. Very simple. And you know what? He's done a great job. It was written so simply on purpose. I got it. It's very simple writing because he wrote Ego is the Enemy. And I just know he wrote it simply because he didn't want to sound all intellectual when he wrote the book. Makes sense? So great book, written so simply. So any person on this earth probably could read it if they can read a book. Okay. And it was basically saying how I used to be full of ego, and ego is the enemy. It really is, to our success, to our friendships, to our relationships, to everything. Because all bad decisions are made from ego, whether they're bad ego or good ego. And we were talking about that. So I would say be successful, lose all ego, and say, okay, where am I really? I don't know what I'm doing. I really need to value the help of others, save time, money, energy, and be a success. What do I need to do? Number one, get help. Always get help. If you have an accident and you're bleeding on the side of the road, do you do it yourself or do you call an ambulance? You get help, right? You ask somebody, please call the ambulance. You don't go, no, I'm going to figure this out myself. That's okay. I might bleed to death, but I want to. Where did that come from? So stop. So I'm basically just stop it. Okay. Get help. Say, okay, I'm going to be really, 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 really in real life, AKR, okay, as my niece says. Where am I? Am I lost? Yeah, I'm a bit lost. Okay. Could I use the help? Yep. You can go get help. That's where the value is. Not pretending that because you don't want to spend money and you blah, 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 blah. Successful people invest in themselves and their businesses. I have always invested in myself, even when I wasn't an entrepreneur. I was telling my kids 2 days ago, I said, I'm thinking of taking singing lessons again. And I said to them, you know what? So funny. Even when I was an actress, barely paying the rent, I used to pay $120 per session 20 years ago for singing lessons. That was a lot of money then for somebody that was just paying the rent and had not a great job and was eating, paying rent, and just was very serious about learning singing and acting, right? I didn't say, oh no, I don't have the money. I said, I need to learn how to sing and that's what it costs. So that's what I'm paying.
I love it. I love it. There is a shortcut and it is knowledge. Jeanne Omlor, thank you so much for being on a meaningful podcast. It was incredible to navigate some of the complex ideas in your brain, but making it simple. I think that's a great takeaway from these conversations. And I would love if you can share your last words of wisdom with our audience, please.
Sure. You are worthy and ready right now, this moment. You are worthy and ready. There's nothing you have to do to be worthy. You don't have to jump through the hoops. You don't have to get another degree. You right this moment, go take a step.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.